That's been
You're live.
Okay, the meeting is now called to order. Roll call's been taken. All right, members of the committee, are there any declarations of conflict of interest for tonight's agenda? Councillor Sullivan.
Yep, 8B2, it involves the company I work for. Thank you.
Any other conflicts of interest? Okay, seeing none. 8A. Provides a summary of Public Works operating budget. I'll now ask Inderjit Hands, General Manager of Public Works, to commence the presentation with respect to the 2023 budget.
Thank you, Chair Martin. Good evening, Chair Martin, members of the committee, Inderjit Hands, General Manager of Public Works. I am pleased to present some of the highlights from our 2023 operating budget. I'd also like to thank CAO Hutchings, Treasurer Joelle and Kelly, who is sitting in, as well as the finance team and the PW leadership team that is in front of you right now that will be there to answer any questions that you may have in preparing the budget. Next slide. So just as a commission overview, very brief, the Public Works Commission is responsible for maintaining and operating the city's water, wastewater, and stormwater infrastructure, the roads and the transit networks, parks and trails, as well as our city-owned facilities. The 23 operating budget provides for operating costs required to maintain our current service levels for all these areas. Next slide. Some of the highlights in the 2023 budget and some of the initiatives that are very important for residents to know that are coming and continuing are improving the security and safety in the downtown core, rollout of our organics program, increasing our waste diversion, maintaining our water and wastewater operations, enhancing our fleet citywide, including continuous training of our drivers and operators, continuing and providing accessible and reliable transit and lift services, maintaining parks, trails, arenas, sports fields, and natural areas, delivering our winter maintenance program in accordance with our minimum maintenance standards, as well as the windrow program, continuing to conduct neighborhood reviews and improving road safety. That's in line with our Vision Zero safety program, and enhancing and promoting the environmental stewardship and fiscal responsibility. Next slide. So in addition to the initiatives that will be undertaken in 23, PW staff showed great enthusiasm making the community a better place by planning and leading the litter pickup event where residents and staff team collected over 400 kilograms of garbage, initiating the public art project on THMB Crossing, where community groups painted and what Brantford means to them in a way to deter graffiti in our city, clearing snow and keeping residents moving, winning awards like the Golden Broom Awards from the BIA and for excellence in response to keeping the downtown core clean. And while all that, we're saving cats from traffic poles as well. Next slide. So this is an important slide here. This chart shows the PW share of the operating budget at just over 27%. There are drivers to the budget that have led to an increase from previous year, including wages and benefits, including full-time, part-time, base salary and benefit increase from contractual wages per the collective agreements, fleet charges with increase in fuel prices, increase to vehicle costs, and leading to increased transfers from our reserve for fleet replacement, and then other council-approved initiatives like the Green Bin program and the annualization of the mobile security program as well. Next slide. Overall, in our wastewater and wastewater environmental services, there is an increase in the transfer to reserves at 2.06% and 3.31% respectively in water and wastewater compared to the 2022 budget. Next slide. So staff are requesting one unmet need in your package today. There is a request for a stormwater technologist. This position is required to comply with the Environmental Protection Act and the Ontario Water Act, as well to prepare reports on, wastewater collection systems and stormwater collection systems. Failure to comply will result in non-compliance with the province regulations, resulting in fines, and ultimately could diminish, public confidence in the ability to manage our assets. We can talk a little bit more about that to council at that time in the package today. And with that, that concludes the presentation. As I mentioned, the directors from each group are here to answer any questions as it relates to the budget in front of you from PW. And I'd like to thank you for the time to allow me to present. Thanks.
Thank you. Any general questions of the presentation? Councillor McCreary.
Chair, thank you. Through you to Indy. Indy, what's the amount of the fine?
I don't have that information in front of me right now, Councillor McCreary, in terms of if the fine is offsetting the cost of the position. But again, the compliance, it will actually, decrease the responsibility and the confidence in us managing it. Really, what it is, it's a new legislation for our environmental compliance where we have to actually report on these assets. We didn't have to do that before. Is their staff able to do it now in the volume that we need to? That's the issue. We're not able to do the work that we have with our current resources to actually adhere to and report the amount of reporting that is required annually for this program. Sylvia, I don't know if you know if there is a fine dollars that have come out.
Through you, Chair, Sylvie Conguera, Director, Environmental Services. The fine could vary depending on the nature of the violation. So it could range $1,000 a day to $100,000 a day.
So perhaps it's cost effective to do this. And could you remind me exactly how much, this is the province, right, that mandates this new position, this new reporting line?
Through you, Chair, to the Councillor McCreary, yes.
And how much of this is the province contributing?
Through you, Mr. Chair, zero.
Yeah, I thought that was the answer. Thank you, folks.
Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you. So this is the only unmet need and this is funded through the water and sewer charges already and the current rates that have been approved already.
Through you, Chair, no, this is a stormwater position, Councillor, so it comes from taxes.
This is right in. This
is a tax funded program.
Right. We don't include stormwater in that budget. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thanks for the clarification.
Seeing no further general questions, we'll go through the items one at a time. So 8B1, Public Works Admin. Any questions or motions? Seeing none, noting Councillor Sullivan's conflict, we go to 8B2, Environmental Services. Any questions or motions? 8B3, Engineering Services. Any questions or motions? 8B4, Operational Services. Councillor McCreary.
Chair, thank you, and through you. Are there opportunities for us to be more efficient with respect to the delivery of some of our operational services? Is that something that we can? I know we've done some pretty good things so far. Is there an opportunity for us to have a look, for instance, at how we schedule and how we supervise the frontline work that we perform?
Mark Jacklin, Director of Operational Services. Through the chair, we're continually looking at opportunities to find better ways of doing work. We've also, there's a number of things that we're doing, especially leveraging technology. We're also looking at establishing artificial intelligence for road patrol. We've organized the departments within operational services under one supervisor each, so that there's better organization and overall those departments. So we are getting better, continually looking at that and making advances every day.
Ratio of supervisory staff folks probably work. Is that something you look at?
Yep. So through the chair, yes, that is something we've looked at. And that's several years ago, we actually added a fourth supervisor to provide better coverage for the employees.
Councillor Sluss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome, folks. Mark, you've got an increase, a little over $400,000 in repair and maintenance. Are we going to be doing more repairs, more maintenance? Is that what that is, or is that something specific?
Through the chair, so that's just for contractor repairs and maintenance. So that's increase in contractor costs. So that's just basically inflation for our contractors.
Okay. Oh, so we're employing contracting people that are doing repairs and maintenance, and okay, and that shows up there. Is that
Yes.
okay? And then my second question is the windrow program. I get complaints all the time that 2 days after the road's been plowed, the pickup truck comes along and cleans off the windrow. And the folks we're dealing with are seniors, and they quite often have medical things. They have things that they have to get out at specific times and specific days. And they end up hiring somebody to knock it out because they got something that they have to get to that day. Is there any way to coordinate that these pickup trucks are in the same area at the same time as the plows are, so they're following plows and picking up the driveways that are tagged, so that we would basically be doing it seamlessly, or at least more seamlessly than we do now?
So through the chair, from a winter operations perspective, we have to follow minimum maintenance standards, and the windrow does not fall under the winter minimum maintenance standards. So we are working with the windrow contractor and our routes so that it can be done as fast as possible. So if you look at the minimum maintenance standards, we have 24 hours to clear the roads, and within 20 of those, once we continue with the red routes, blue routes, green routes, we ask the windrow contractor to start. And so it can take up to 48 hours to get the windrows cleared.
But there's no way of expediting that, eh? That like I indicated, if they're doing the Greenbrier, the truck is like 2 blocks behind the plow. That tight. Is there a way to coordinate it that tight?
So through the chair, to be blunt, no.
Rather than you answer that question, can you look at that and
Yes.
see if there's a way that, and I think maybe Andy's got an answer, but if there's a way to do that, I think that the program would be very well received, because I get a lot of calls saying, why do you guys even bother doing this? It's a great idea, but it comes way too late. Sometimes it's melted before the guy gets here.
Yes, through the chair, just to add to what Mark had mentioned. So there's two things. One is in an ideal storm, which they're not ideal. We'd like to follow up not only with windrow, but as well as our transit stops. And so as you go through reds, you go and complete reds, water running on the road. Then you go in and you do your transit stops, and you're not piling that snow on. The difficulty that we run into sometimes is we do a pass through a street where we have our windrows, we send them in, there's parked cars. Then as they move, we want to send the plows back through, which creates that second windrow. And so that's where if we have, and we're going to be looking at this, Mark and I, about how we deal with parked cars during winter storm events, that would, I think, help quite a bit in terms of that second pass and the calls that you're getting in terms of, and that second pass actually is a lot of ice. So it's the heavier snow that's been packed for a while. So really it's to get the cars off of the road as much as we can during winter events. But yes, in an ideal world, we are going to be reviewing how our windrow program as well as our transit bus stop clearing happens.
Okay. And just one further, I guess, because it's winter, you get asked these questions a lot. What is our policy when somebody has shoveled their sidewalk, but they have no boulevard, and then the plow goes through and fills up their sidewalk again? Do we go back and do their sidewalk that they've already done, or what is the policy on that? I know we can call and someone will, if they have time, they'll go out there and do it. But is there a policy that happens automatically?
Through the chair, there's not a policy that happens automatically. We obviously do our best to go slow when we're plowing those front-facing sidewalks to reduce the amount of snow. But our main goal is to get that snow off of the road to make it safe for the roads. Should we get complaints, we can look at those, and we can look at those individually.
Okay, it just seems very unfair to the person that doesn't have a boulevard. You know, they go out there and they do what they're asked to do, and then we come and undo that. And I realize the plow really doesn't, it's got to go somewhere. And I get that, but it's just, it's unfortunate when somebody, particularly somebody that either has a disability or is too old to be doing that, and they've hired somebody and they come and they do a nice job, and then 3 hours later it's full again. It's very frustrating for the resident. Yep. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question as always. Has there been any consideration into using this secondary plow? I know some municipalities are using the plow guard as it's going past the driveways and the walkways to stop the snow from being left behind, and then it raises back up as they continue on. Has there been any thought of using that type of technology?
Through the chair, I've actually saw a video on that the other day. I believe it was Edmonton was using that to reduce the windrow. So we don't currently have that. We are looking, obviously, every year we look at the different materials and different machinery that we can use. So that is something that we will definitely look into.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Carpenter.
I think Councillor Sless opened that Pandora's box, Mark. By the way, thanks for your services here, Mark. I mean, you went up above and beyond on a couple of constituents of mine that were seniors, so I really appreciate that. And I appreciate all the work you do and your team. When you talk about the budget, though, have we not left your budget so that in a snow year, for example, if there's money left over in that snow budget that rolls over back into the budget for the following year, do you still have that in place?
Through the chair, there was reserve. It just started actually last year.
Okay.
So we do have a reserve now.
So considering this year, I mean, I think the street sweeper went by last night, which made me think it was spring, but you know, so we've had one major snowfall this year at this point. So God willing, you know, we get through with less that money will be available. But the windrow program, as Councilor Sless was talking about, we have GPS on all our plows, do we not? We know where they are at all times and how fast they're going, everything else, right?
Through the chair, that's correct.
So there shouldn't be any reason why the guy that has a snow contract, what does he get? $7 a driveway or $8 a driveway for dropping that plow and keeping that heater going and the music going in the truck and just moving that snow just 3 feet?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, so there shouldn't be any reason why they couldn't have to know where the GPS where they are as well and be able to clear those windrows out rather quickly if they simply just know where the GPS for the vehicle is.
So
And maybe the contractor needs to step it. I'm just wondering, because I'm loath to pay a contractor $7 or $8 for doing a driveway that the neighbor did for the neighbor because they needed to get out. And I don't know how do we manage whether they get paid or not for that windrow that they didn't do?
through the chair. So the windrow program actually works. As soon as we're done the red routes, we actually call out the contractor to start. So they'll do all the windows on the red routes. As soon as we finish the blue routes, then we call the windrow to contractor do the blue routes. The unfortunate piece is the majority of those 1,400 houses actually fall under green routes, which is our residential. So that's why it takes a little bit of time to actually complete the windrows. So what we do have in place is GPS and GIS. So the contractor actually has to take a picture once they complete the work, and we actually go out and inspect it within a day typically, and that's how we determine how much the contractor is to be paid.
And when you got the people on the workers on the front lines on doing the snow plowing, you keep them relatively on the same routes, do you not? So they get to know the neighborhoods and so forth. I got a list of grass that you're going to have to be repairing, but I'll give you that later.
Through the chair, yes, there's there's the specific routes, yeah, and they're typically trained on it or try to go through them.
And you
Yes.
try and keep them on those particular routes, which is probably a good idea. They get to know the neighborhood and then cars and so forth. And they know, okay. We have a reverse frontage policy where if the sidewalk or if there's a sidewalk on the back side of a house, for example, Clarence Street, we got 2 on the front and then the Clarence and West there. And Councilman McCurry, I know, has some by the mall where actually quite a few there. And they're in that reverse frontage policy. So we are clearing those ones, are we not? But I don't think they're all on the list. Is there a way some way we could get together and update all the lists of what's sort of being missed on those reverse frontage
Yeah, through the chair, we can take a look at that. We have 70 kilometers of trails and they're not trails, but reverse frontage and sidewalks that we do complete. So we do look at that all the time, and I can have, we'll work with the supervisors to ensure that it's all up to date.
And I'm not placing blame anywhere because we have accepted the minimum standards, which you've mentioned a couple of times for good reason for us to say, you know, if our constituents want a higher standard, then we need to provide that. And I think we can. When we do we also have a bunch of trails that my understanding was anything that we paved was to be cleaned. And now I'm finding out it's not the case. I've had this discussion with Indy already. And for example, you know, the walkway down Forest Ave was not clean because it was, well, there's a sidewalk on one side and that's a pathway. So they considered that not being done. But then the pathway through the middle of Parsons Park is done. So it's hard for us to explain to constituents on one side of the city to the other, why does that get done and this doesn't get done? So what I'm suggesting is that maybe your department meet with a counselor from each ward here and long before, like probably in the summertime, and decide what kind of standard we want for next year and what our expectations are for our wards, so that we could maybe work on what the program should look like going forward. And then keeping that money in your budget rolling over each year should help us be able to make those adjustments, so that we're not just going by what is a minimum standard, but you got some flexibility, like you're 3/4 of the way through the year, you've had one snowfall, there's going to be a surplus for sure.
Councillor Carpenter, you've exceeded your time.
To going forward. Thank you.
Councillor Caputo.
Thank you, Chair. Mark, just a quick question. You mentioned about future, looking at how you're going to be handling snow removal where cars are still on the street. I received plenty of phone calls this past snowstorm on roads not being done in subdivisions, so forth. So I kept driving through them, and 4 days later, there's still cars with the snow still plowed around them. Those cars have no reason that we even want to move it. So can you just give me an idea as to what you're thinking and what the process is going to be going forward? I think I've lived in a lot of municipalities in this province, and I think we're the only city that doesn't have any type of bylaw where we actually have cars off the road between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. Just thinking, I don't think this is the venue, but just to get an idea.
It's through the chair. I know through the capital budget, I believe there was a parking assessment that was approved for the parking department. And that is actually we're going to be looking at that as part of that and how we're going to be moving forward with that.
Thanks.
Okay, before I go to second time speakers, I have some comments. Mark, I had a complaint from someone about the windrow program. They get cleared out, but then the truck does the major street that they're next to, and it comes around the corner and they dump it in their driveway again, but that doesn't get done. The windrow doesn't get cleaned out again because it was already done once. Is there a way to capture when they go back and redo the major routes, that if it comes around and plows in someone's driveway, they get back on the windrow list to get that cleaned out?
Through the chair, we could, if you could provide the location, if you can send me an email later, we can take a look at that and see what we can do.
Okay, and probably won't work in all areas, but in some areas, for the sidewalks that are right against the street, last winter when I was in Smiths Falls, the plow come by, plowed the street, put the windrow on the sidewalk, then came by again and moved the windrow to the back of the sidewalk. I thought that was something that was innovative and something they do there. It's something that maybe we should look at. I mean, there are times where the sidewalk goes right up against a house, you know, or a business in the downtown kind of thing, but there might be some areas where we can send the plow a second time to push the windrow back and take care of sidewalks that way, especially if it's reverse frontage where we have to do the sidewalk anyway. But if you could look into that for some areas, see if that's something that's feasible. Okay, second time, Councillor McCurry.
Chair, thank you, and through you to staff. Mark, I think you should lobby the CAO and your GM to move these budget deliberations to the springtime. Councillor Carpenter and I were just talking despite the plexiglass. And perhaps what might be helpful is for us to bring a resolution to have a look at options with respect to sidewalk snow clearing and pathway snow clearing. There are some areas that we do and some that we don't, and it might be helpful to do some clarity for our purpose and yours.
Councilor Carpenter, did you want a second one?
Yes, please. Thank you. Yeah, and I agree. And it's hard to talk about snow removal in the summertime. Most residents, but when we have this, we'll bring a resolution forward to review this. But the other thing we'll want to review is the legalities of it. The sidewalks belong to the municipality, and we're suggesting that the citizens got to clean them, and then we're suggesting that we're going to fine them for not cleaning our sidewalks owned by the municipality. We know there's been lots of case law that says, no, it's your responsibility, municipality. It always go to the deepest pockets. And I know Councilor Caputo talked about getting vehicles off the street. We were one vote short of actually making that actually policy. It didn't work that one year. And we weren't too far off from actually having the sidewalks maintained by the city as well. I know that's costly, but they are our sidewalks. And that's where the problem becomes. Another problem becomes when we get when we have subdivisions, how they're built, how they're designed. So, and I know the issue is maybe we could suggest that, you clear your sidewalk up, maybe your sidewalk's going to move up on the list when it gets plowed. I'm not too sure, but I think we need to have that wholesome discussion and the whole policy and the process going forward with legal opinion and what our options are. The staff are doing an excellent job, and the people in the trucks, the guys driving the plows sure take a beating sometimes from some of the constituents, but they also get some friendly waves by those who are happy to see them as well. So it works both ways. Thanks.
Yeah, I just remembered one other thing. Talking about parked cars, it's not legal to leave your car parked on the street for more than 24 hours, I believe. Is that correct?
Through the chair, it's parking enforcement. I believe that is the rule.
Okay. I'm wondering if we should send parking enforcement through the city 2 days after a storm, and any place where the windrow is still intact all the way around the car, issue a ticket. It might encourage people to get their cars off the street during a snowstorm, and instead of chalking the tires and waiting a day and going back, they can just go through and see that it hasn't moved in 2 days and give them a ticket. So if you could check with bylaw and see if that's an option, that might help.
So to the chair, Heidi DeVries, General Manager, People, Legislative Services and Planning. That includes bylaw. I am happy to say to this committee that our friends in operational services and the bylaw team are actually working together on this very issue, that there is a pending report with updates to how we regulate parking. I don't have all the details, and certainly you heard from Mr. Jacqueline as well. We can include that in a parking study, and we can certainly look at updating our parking enforcement during snow events. Of course, there's a difference between the ticket and a tow. We can't tow every vehicle, so I do think it may help with some of the habits that you're seeing of cars remaining for too long in areas where we really need more efficient snow clearing. So there's a lot of coordination between those two groups, and we're really grateful for the information we're getting from the operational services team. So we're working on those improvements. We don't need anything off the floor.
Okay, because there was a car on my street that didn't move for a week after the snowstorm. The windrow was intact for a full week afterwards. So it's something that needs to be looked at. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Chair. And further to your point, I think that we should make sure that this fine, if we're going to start implementing it, is substantial. We need to make sure we're driving the point home. Thank you.
Yep. Anything further on 8.4 B4? All right, we'll move on to 8B5, Parks and Facility Services. Questions, Councilor Carpenter.
Thank you. It was kind of a rough year last year, just trying to get people to cut the grass, wasn't it, Rick? I think.
Through the chair, Rick Cox, Director of Parks and Facility Services. Yes, it's been a couple of years struggling to fill out our summer seasonal and student complement, and get the contractors as well the contractors themselves are also having trouble filling their squads too. So it's a problem we're having across the board.
Yeah, and we're already started the hiring process for this coming season, have we not?
Yeah, that's correct. Through the chair, the interviews are starting at the end of next week, and we've already started to that recruitment.
And I just asked for one thing that I haven't seen this year, and I've seen previous budgets. I'd like to get a complete copy of the expenses and revenue for the Walter Gretzky Golf Course. Usually that's a separate entity, a separate budget. I'm sure it's separated. I hope it's not mixed with everything else. But I'd like to find out how well we did there over the last year. Thank you.
Councillor Sullivan.
Can I just if I can just answer that maybe for Director Cox, through you, Mr. Chair, Brian Hutchings, CEO. There is a standard report. When the year end is complete, we bring forth a report on the golf course, on Walter Gretzky Golf Course. It'll be part of an update, which will come in about May timeframe.
Usually we see it in our budget package with our budgets. That's why I'd
Okay.
like to see it.
Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Chair. Just what is do we know what the age limit is for hiring for student help?
Through the chair, we try and hire post-secondary students simply because they have more of the experience, maturity, one would hope, and also driver's licenses that we might need. And that's in our department. Across the city, in other departments and other commissions, obviously we're hiring younger high school students. We do have some high school students on our team, but they're not available until later on in our work cycle as well. So for lots of reasons, we do try and look to our post-secondary students first and then follow up with high school, at least in the parks and facilities operation.
Well, the reason why I asked is about a year and a half ago, my son actually tried to go and help with the landscapers and cutting grass and stuff like that. He was 16 and nobody would even look at him because of his age. That's all.
Councillor Sluss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rick, are we getting a better response? Like you're interviewing now, are you getting lots of applicants or no? Is it still thin?
Through the chair, this year, no, we haven't seen a bounce back for this year. It's went down through COVID for lots of reasons, and we certainly haven't seen that bounce back this year. We have about the same number of applicants this year as last year.
So we're going to struggle again. Thank you.
Okay, I noticed there's no changes to the golf operations. I thought we discussed increasing either the memberships or some kind of a maintenance fee once the new clubhouse was built to help pay for that. Is there a reason why there's no increase for that?
Through the chair to the chair, there's actually almost $200,000 additional revenue projected in the golf operations this year through increased membership fees and additional business. The bottom line is a zero base in that there's no tax support. So that zero tax support hasn't changed, but within the operating budget for the golf operation, there are some changes, including I think it's $195,000 in additional revenue projected for 2023.
Okay, but golf operations isn't covering the debenture for the new clubhouse, is it?
So the golf operation contributes annually to repay for the debenture. So there is a transfer from golf operations against that debenture. I'll ask my financial colleagues to perhaps expand on that detail, but there is a transfer from the golf operations to offset the cost of the golf construction.
Okay.
There is an annual transfer, and we are, the golf operations is working to paying off the costs for the facility.
Does the transfer cover the full amount of the debenture payment?
I would have to double check on that.
Okay.
Can I get back to you on that one?
Yep. While we're waiting for that, we'll move on to 8B6. Fleet and Transit Services. Any questions or motions? Okay. Brings us to 8C, unmet need. There's one unmet need for Public Works. The committee may move a motion to approve the individual unmet need. Do we have a mover for the unmet need? Moved by Councillor Sullivan, seconded by Councillor McCurry. Questions, comments? Counselor Carpenter.
I thought things that were mandated by the province don't belong under unmet needs. Am I reading that wrong? I thought if we have to do it, it's mandatory. It's part of the health and safety. If the province is recommending, I think it's for our health to do what the province says. So am I reading that wrong?
I believe in the past that the unmet needs had several different categories. Mandatory was one of them, and we
Yeah.
pretty much did them all, but the rest of them were ranked based on whether they were related to growth or other categories.
Yeah, so this one's mandatory. I just thought it would have been in the base, but built in automatic. That's why I asked the question. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, we'll call the question. Having problems with these, Craig?
Not at all. The item carries, the unmet need carries unanimously on a recorded vote. Those in favor, Councillor Sakoli, Sullivan, Caputo, Celeste, Martin, McCreary, Carpenter, and Samwell.
Thank you. Do staff have an answer to the golf question yet?
There was no debenture issued for the golf clubhouse build. There was funding used from the capital funding envelope, and that is being repaid annually.
Okay, so it's just
A transfer back to
a
the capital
transfer
funding
until the
envelope.
amount is covered off.
And sorry, through the chair. Yes.
Yeah. Is there interest charged on that, or is it just a straight no interest repayment?
Through the chair, it is just a straight payment.
Okay, thank you. All right, brings us to 9A. Summary of corporate financing operating budget. I'll now ask Kelly Schmidt, Manager of Finance, Financial Analyst, to commence the presentation with respect to the 2023 budget. Oh,
I just want to Kelly will take it over and just want to let everybody know that Joelle Daniels, our treasurer, trustworthy treasurer, is normally here and steady, but she had a big milestone day on Monday and was stuck. Her flight was changed yesterday and she's stuck in Las Vegas at the moment. So,
what a rough place to be stuck.
It's not good to say your treasurer is in Las Vegas, but Kelly and the team gathered yesterday and today, and they're ready to fill in for Joelle, which are big shoes to fill. So Kelly, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. I'm Kelly Schmidt, Manager of Financial Analysis, and I would like to present the Corporate Financing 2023 operating budget. And can we have the slides, please? Okay, next slide, please. The corporate financing provides the budget for a number of tax-supported contractual obligations and offsetting revenues that are corporate in nature and not attributable to a single commission. These items include corporate insurance, retiree benefit premiums, debenture payments, grants, boundary compensation payments, investment income, payments in lieu of tax and supplementary taxes, investment in Grandbridge Corporation, and contingencies. Additionally, corporate financing provides the annual budget for contributions to the city's tax-supported capital envelope reserves. Next slide, please. The overall combined budget for corporate financing is a decrease of 12.67%. There are a lot of changes throughout the budget that will be further explained on the next slides. Next slide, please. The debenture financing costs have increased for 2023 due to the annualization of the debt servicing costs for the new City Hall. 2022 had only one semi-annual payment, whereas in 2023, there are two semi-annual payments. Capital financing represents the tax-supported transfers to the capital envelope reserves that are necessary to fund the capital budget. The decrease here is a result of council direction to remove a project from the 2023 capital budget and use those monies to provide a one-time reduction to the 2023 operating budget. These monies will be added back in the 2024 budget. The boundary agreement provides two streams of compensation to the county for lands transferred to the city. The first is an annual amount of almost 1.2 million funded from the Casino Legacy Reserve and has no impact on the budget. The second payment is based on the taxes levied on the annex properties, and this payment is decreasing annually on a straight line basis. Next slide, please. The utility supplementary taxes are paid by properties added to the tax roll mid-year. These are budgeted revenues and are based on experience. Staff has increased these revenue, and based on experience, staff has increased these revenues 750,000 for 2023, and this is offset by a reduced payment in lieu of tax for the casino. The investment income budget has benefited from a steep rise in interest rates beginning in mid-2022 and into 2023, and is providing significantly better returns on the city's investment portfolio. The current and retirees benefit budget includes a provision for tax-supported benefit costs associated with WSIB premium and earnings ceiling increases that were announced after departmental budgets have been prepared. There is also an increase in the number of retirees on the benefits for 2023. Next slide, please. The utility revenue budget includes dividends from Grand Bridge Corporation. Gross revenues for 2023 are budgeted at 3.1 million, less the budgeted transfer to the capital reserve for 1.1 million. The corporate insurance budget is increasing by almost 20% and is driven up by premium rate increases. The employee gapping budget represents savings resulting from position vacancies, and those estimated savings have been increased by 500,000 for the 2023 budget. Next slide, please. The shared services agreement cost sharing phase in. A new shared services agreement between the city and county for social services beginning in 2022 resulted in a larger share of the costs being shared by the county, but this is being phased in over 3 years. Council approved the one-time special dividends received from the previous Brantford Energy Corp in 2022 to recognize the full benefit of the new agreement in 2022 and phase out the reliance in 2023 and 2024. The increase seen in this budget is offset by a decrease in the shared services budget. The post-secondary budget provides the annual contribution to the Y Laurier Athletic Complex, which ends in 2025. This contribution is funded from the Casino Legacy Reserve and has no net operating budget impact. And finally, the casino budget records the casino revenues, which are then transferred to the Casino Legacy Reserve and distributed in accordance with the use of casino funds policy. Next slide, please. Thank you, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Well done. Councilor Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The utility revenues, those revenues that are generated they go, those revenues, are they added to the capital budget or they're not in the operating budget, are they?
Through the chair, the revenues from the utility corporations are the dividends, and they're in the operating budget with a portion transferred to the capital funding envelope reserve.
Yeah, I'd like us to work on, because those are not guaranteed revenues. I'd like to see us work on moving those revenues to capital over the long haul. When we look at our next 4-year budget, I'd like to see us move those revenues to capital because they're not guaranteed. And this way, we're not having a sudden increase in taxes because revenue didn't show up where it should. So anything that's not a guaranteed revenue, I'd like to see that moved to capital, give us more flexibility in the capital budget, and in case something were to happen to those revenues. Thank you.
Councillor McCreary.
Chair, thank you. Contrary to what Councillor Carpenter has just asked, I'm going to ask the opposite of that. We're making a 1.15 million transfer to reserves from the Grand Bridge Energy account. That is going to capital financing reserve. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay. What is the impact on leaving that in the budget to offset the increase in the tax levy?
Just a moment, please.
Sorry, I don't mean that the amount it would reduce taxes. I'm just asking what the impact of that would be, not in a dollars and cents fashion, but so if we apply that to reduction of tax for this year instead of contributing to capital, we would have to raise that money next year. Is that correct?
Through the chair, could you repeat the question?
Not
We
verbatim.
do need the money
Yes.
to fund our capital
Correct.
budget.
Yeah. So it's not going to a dedicated capital account. It's going to an unallocated capital reserve, right?
Through the chair, it's going to the capital funding envelope, which is a general reserve for all city capital.
Okay. So there would be $1.1 million less available in that account at the end of this year if we did that, right? And what's your forecast of our ability to raise additional funds next year if we had to find that 1.15 million again? Do you expect to have more revenue next year than we have this year?
If I can answer that, Mr. Chair, to the Councilor McCreary's, so the capital budget included the $1.1 million being transferred over to it already. We approved that capital budget, so it would be a little bit of an unwinding of that. But to your question earlier, the first round of questions, the 1.1 million, if we use it now, we'd have to have another 1.1 million for next year we'd have to almost double to find it. The projections for Grand Bridge Energy right now, next year will be about $100,000 more than this 3.053, I believe it is, that we have right now. And then the year after that, it'll go up another $400,000, and then after that, it's supposed to go up exponentially, like by $600,000-700,000 a year to max at around $5.4 million. That was the business case. We have a slow startup, like any startup. Once they start finding synergies between the two companies, that's what they'll start seeing about year 3 exponentially growth.
What's our forecast for assessment increase for 2024?
Pat Talbert, Manager of Revenue and Tax Collector. We don't have a forecast yet, but we would expect that it would be, we had a good year in 2022. But it's basically based on the building permit revenue or activity that we see in the prior year or two, which has been very good. So I could expect that there will be another good year of assessment growth in 2023 for 2024.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just speaking to that, I've seen this council raid the capital contributions many times over the years, and it results in a hole in our capital budget that we end up we had to do a capital levy to increase funding to capital to make up for money that we stole to keep operating costs down. So it's a robbing Peter to pay Paul situation, and it's just a shell game that gets us nowhere. Okay, so we'll go into the specific areas now. So we'll start with 9B1, Police Board honorariums. Any questions or motions? Councilor McCreary.
We have an increase there. Does that allow for individuals on that board that we pay for to get a bump in pay?
Through the chair, there is a bylaw in place that allows for the board to receive the same increase as the non-union administrative staff. This increase is slightly higher than that the non-union administrative staff have in 2023. However, the increase is brought in in mid 2023 for the honorarium. So it reflects a higher percentage in 2023 for the police board honorariums.
Does that pay for the board's staff member as well, that account?
Through the chair, yes, it does.
Yes, thank you.
Seeing no further, we'll go to 9B2, debt financing. Any questions or motions? 9B3, capital financing. 9B4, boundary adjustment. 9B5, SUPS PIL on taxes. Any questions or motions? I just had one question. The payment in lieu for the casino went down considerably this year, I believe. What's the justification for that? Just because they asked for it?
Through the chair, no, there was an assessment appeal on the casino, and it was dropped from 75 million down to 63,250,000. So that reflects that drop in value, which results in the loss of property taxes of around 200,000.
Okay, and they wanted the assessment dropped even further because they were trying to base the value on what they paid for the management contract, which has nothing to do with the value of the property. Is that correct?
Yeah, through the chair, correct. Yeah, there was an operating lease between the province and the operators of the casino, or the OLG and the operators of the casino.
Yeah.
And it was around $60 million. They were actually seeking a value of 35 million was their in their statement of issues was the value they were looking for. So we between ourselves, the MPAC and the operator of the casino, the settled amount was 63,250,000.
Okay, and in your opinion, is that fair, or is that a fair question to ask you?
Well, we did go through the process, and then yeah, it was the settlement amount that everybody agreed on. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Anything further on that? Investment income, 9B6, Councilor Carpenter.
Yes, the investment income is up significantly because of the interest rates, right? As you said. We're expecting interest rates to go up a little more. Are we looking at locking some of our investments in for longer term to capture some of this high interest rate return?
Through the chair, Wanda Harding, manager of accounting. The approach we've taken more recently is locking in for a little bit longer terms. For the last couple of years, we've been doing shorter terms because we were able to get a better return, but we are now locking in for 3 to 5 years because the rates are at a higher level right now, and we anticipate that the interest rates will have a pause. At least that's what the Bank of Canada is suggesting as we move into 2023 and 2024. So we are going a little longer.
Another 0.5% or 1%. Now when we look at, we borrow from ourselves sometimes internally, we venture internally. Is it still profitable to venture internally at these rates, or is it better not to now? Or do we change the rate that that's what the real question is. So are we changing the rate that when we borrow from ourselves now to a higher rate? I think it was 6% before. Would it be higher now with the new rates?
Maybe I'll take that, Kelly. Up until 2022 was beneficial to when we look at debt financing, again, we'll have to do that assessment. We haven't rates up to this point in time, it was beneficial, but we'll look at it as a case by case. And if not, we'll go to Infrastructure Ontario, who does our debentures for us. But up to this point, it has been, but we'll see with the rates now.
Okay, that's worth a look. Thanks.
Councillor McCurry.
Chair, thank you again on that topic. It's quite an extraordinary increase. Is there anything extraordinary that we've benefited from other than interest rates?
Through the chair, no, this is just definitely the interest rates. We have over COVID been able to maintain healthy cash flows and so forth. So we've just had the money to invest.
And we can presume that will continue as interest rates continue to not fall?
Through the chair, that is the expectation, but we do expect the interest rates to pause. There'll be another Bank of Canada announcement March 8th. And the expectation is that they will start to slow down the increase to the Bank of Canada rates. So we've factored that into our calculations for the expected investment income.
Thank you.
Anything further on this? Seeing none brings us to B7, current and retiree benefits. Councillor Carpenter.
Yeah, we were behind in this for a while. Does this get us caught up? And we were always sort of a little behind chasing the benefits that we had to put in reserves to meet retirees. Are we caught up now, or we got a ways to go yet?
Through the chair, are you talking about sick leave benefits?
Yes. Isn't that what this current and retiree benefits is?
Through the chair, the current and retiree benefits includes a WSIB amount that was given to that we were notified of at the end as budgets had already been prepared, and so we put a placeholder in for the WSIB.
Okay, so this hasn't got to do with us putting enough away for the retiree benefits when they retire from our side of things, right? So that's another matter then. Okay, we'll save that for finance. Thanks.
Yeah, I remember we had an unfunded liability with I believe it was firefighter sick leave payout. And we were contributing to that to try and fund that liability. Do we know where that stands at this time, or is that?
Through the chair, I will have to get back to you on the firefighters' sick leave.
Yeah, if you could send us a memo, that would be fine. Okay, 9B8, casino financing. Councillor Carpenter.
I take it, probably to the CAO, we'll be having a meeting shortly to review our casino financing policy and procedures. I think it's a requirement once per term of council.
Yes, through Mr. Chair, I believe the treasurer mentioned that the last meeting or so. Meetings have all merged together in my mind, but she mentioned that last week. We will. It's a policy will be coming forward to this early in the next few months, because once every term of council, we do have to review the policy. You're right to correct, Councillor Carpenter.
Okay, and I just sort of want to use this opportunity to sort of plant the seed that we should be looking at the long-term viability of our share of funding for our new hospital, so we can get the province moving quicker, so we can actually get the hospital quicker rather than 15 years from now or 10 years from now. So just I'm planting that seed with my colleagues on council. Thank you.
Any others on casino financing? Okay. 9B9, corporate contributions and grants. 9B10, utility financing revenues. Any questions, comments? 11, insurance. 12, employee gapping. This is one we've rated a few times. It's getting pretty high. Councillor McCurry.
Through you, Chair, can we do better?
Through the chair, no.
So if I can through the chair to try to soften that no a little bit. The treasurer's not just in Las Vegas. She sends me, I feel like I'm a little kid because she sends me notes to make sure I get answers right. So for gapping, this is from our treasurer. We are taking this budget up to 2.8 million in 2023, which is amount we expect to reach, but not greatly exceed for 2022 actual full-time gapping. So the 3-year average in pre-COVID was 2.2 million. Now during COVID, it jumped up to over about 3.3. So Joelle is taking a very conservative approach at 2.8 million, but she's also warning us that pre-COVID, we're getting back to normal times. Gapping was only 2.2 million. So staff feel we're cautious, but we think that can be done 2.8 million. So we're not recommending anything more.
Does that take into account our difficulties in hiring lifeguards, seasonal staff? Is there an opportunity to recognize that?
Through the chair, in the numbers that have been calculated, all of those gapping amounts have been considered when we have set our budget.
And thinking back to when Chief Davis was here talking about his budget mirroring our budgets, I'm still not sure I entirely understand the process that he has adopted to meet our process and our policy. Could you explain exactly how we budget our wages?
Through the chair, our full-time wages are budgeted at top of the range, and our benefits are budgeted as family, as if everyone is a family benefit package. When this was done, we increased our gapping to compensate. The reason for doing that was to take out the fluctuations that were experienced in individual departments.
So the gapping then ends up in surplus at year end in terms of wages saved from not hitting the top end?
Through the chair, that is correct.
What was our surplus for 2022? Could you remind us?
Through the chair, we are still processing our year-end adjustments, but we are anticipating it will be between 500 and 600, which is our increase to the gapping budget in 2023.
So you've already recognized that. Yeah.
Through the chair, yes.
See, I was happy when you just said no.
I should have left it at that.
Okay, nothing further on gapping. Post-secondary, B13. B14, operating budget contingency. Questions? Councillor McCurry.
Does that recognize the necessity to make changes into wage lines?
Through the chair, yes, it does. Through HR reports, etc. Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions on budget contingency? Okay, brings us to the end of section 9. So we're going to take a 25-minute recess and be back for 6 o'clock. And we'll resume at that time. Thank you. Forum again, so we'll get started. We are now at 10A, staff report regarding the 30% tax rate reduction for vacant and excess land. Can I get a mover? Councillor Carpenter, seconded by Councillor Sluss. You got to be quick. Anybody wish to speak to this? Councillor Carpenter, go ahead.
Council Martin will remember, we've been trying to get this done for ages. It was, we seem to think we know the 30% reduction was actually a reward for those that didn't have their buildings occupied. So, you didn't have it rented, and we ended up with all these gray field strip plazas because it was beneficial now just not to have it full. We lobbied and argued for the provincial government for many years and to have this change, and it's finally here. So certainly happy to implement it.
Yeah, I remember it was probably about 10 years from when we got a resolution passed asking the province to change it, but I then finally got around to making the change. But it was because of our resolution, I'm sure. But we already did the vacant buildings. Why was this not done at the same time for vacant land?
Yeah, we did the vacant buildings in 2017. We had to go through a business consultation process and then ask the province for permission to do it. And so most municipalities did the vacant unit, got rid of the vacant unit rebate first. And then after a couple of years, the province got rid of the need to do a business community consultation and the need to actually ask the province for permission to do it. So then lots of municipalities started getting rid of the 30% subclass reductions as well. So we're just jumping on board as well.
Yeah. Thank you. As Councillor Carpenter said, it was counterproductive to all the work we were trying to do to get brownfields and gray fields cleaned up when we'd have been better off if we could charge them an extra 30%, but instead we had to give them a 30% bonus. Councillor Sluss.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I was pleased to second this. I think it puts us more in line with the communities in Ontario. We're one of the few that doesn't do this. So I think it puts us there. I think the county's not, and I think maybe Kingston, if I remember correctly, but most other municipalities comparable are all have already approved this and a number of years ago. So we're catching up. But yeah, it was lucrative for some and not so much for others, and I think we were the others. So I think we're just getting caught up.
Councillor McCurry.
Yeah, Chair, thank you, and through you to staff. So this adds $842,000 of revenue for this year.
Through the chair, it doesn't increase the revenue. It shifts the tax revenue from the fully occupied properties like residential properties and fully occupied commercial and industrial properties to the vacant land and excess land properties. So it's just a difference in who's paying for the taxes, our current tax levy.
Now we've got some land banked areas, I believe, within the city boundaries now. Does this apply to agricultural land that's not in use?
I'm not 100% sure. I don't know specifically which lands those are. If they're city of Brantford lands, they're probably exempt from taxes, so it wouldn't affect it.
No, I'm speaking of third-party ownerships.
Okay, so then if it's used for farming, then it's they're in the farm class anyway, so they're getting a 25% of the residential tax rate. So they're already getting a great rate if it's being farmed. If it's not being farmed, it is probably vacant land, and then we'll be subject to this increase in taxes.
So is that something we will inspect?
No, it'll just happen. It's all these properties are classed by MPAC as vacant land or excess land. We're just changing the rate, and it'll happen automatically during the final billing.
Excellent, thank you.
Councillor Sluss.
If this is approved, what does that do to the increase to a residential home, a single family dwelling?
Through the chair, so the impact on the average residential home is a reduction of about $17 in taxes.
Can you give me a percentage on that?
It's 0.5%.
0.5%. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Is there anything that's done to make sure that someone who's in the agricultural class is actually using the land for agricultural purposes?
Yes, and it's mostly done through MPAC, but
Okay.
they have to submit an application, and it's usually annually, I think. And I don't remember the name of the group, but OMAFRA used to be the name. It's changed. I don't remember the name, but there used to have to be an application through that group to prove that they were still farming the land.
And they can't be farming dandelions.
Yes, I'm not sure the specifics, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. Seeing nothing further, we'll call the question. Oh, sorry, Councillor Caputo.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question, this 30% reduction, would that entail any properties that are still waiting for either zoning or building permits to be done, or is that just for vacant land, period?
It could include those, but if it's classed as vacant land or excess land, which is excess land to a property that's already has improvements on it, it would still they're losing that 30% reduction in taxes.
And the hope with that is it'll encourage developers to move quicker on their vacant parcels so that we see the development quicker once things are approved. Now we'll call the question.
Sub 10A, elimination of vacant land and excess land property tax reductions, carries unanimously on a recorded vote. Those in favor, Councillor Stokoli, Sullivan, Caputo, Celeste, Martin, McCreary, Carpenter, and Samwell.
Okay, brings us to step 11, finalization of operating budget. Do members wish to make any motions or any other operating budget increases or decreases? And I believe Councillor Caputo, you have one.
Thank you, Chair. I do. I would like to amend the wording that the annual savings realized in the curbside collection operations be transferred to roads reserve, RF 0537 for the years 2023 to 2027 inclusive.
Who's your seconder for that? Councillor Stokoli? Is there any staff member that can speak to what the ramifications of this might be?
Through the chair. So my understanding of the request is that if there is any surplus in that account, that would be then transferred into road reserves. Really, there's not, the years are up and down in curbside collection. We're in a contract until 2027. But again, right now, the way that it's phrased, and my understanding of it is that there isn't any impact. It's just if there is any surplus at the end of the year, we just collect that and put it into road reserves.
If there's a surplus now, what happens with it?
It stays within that account, within curbside collection. It's not shifted anywhere.
In case there's an excess expense in curbside collection
Then it would be used
subsequent
up.
year.
And here, and to you, Chair, I don't feel that the intent is not to use it. If there is a year where there is no surplus, then there's nothing that's going to go to that reserve. It's only if there is a surplus, and it looks like the intent is to just cover until we have that contract. And then once we do enter into a new contract for curbside collection in 27 with this one ending, then we can reevaluate at that time.
Okay. Yep.
Through the chair, I think the intent is that it's surplus variance. So that would be your actual expenditures to your budget, not a surplus bottom line.
You lost me there.
If the actual operations that year experience a surplus in comparison to what the budget expected or what the budget passed was, that's when the transfer will be made. So if the bang on
resolution,
budget, there's no transfer.
Okay. Yeah, Councillor Caputo.
That's exactly what I'm looking for. I think through conversations with India, we are in contracts till 2027, and I think we need to revisit our solid waste program and see if there's any opportunities there as we move forward. What I've seen in other municipalities that we not just take that and keep it in that spot, but be able to transfer those monies into something that we desperately need in the city, which is road repair. So if there's going to be a savings, we just transfer those funds into something that we need.
Councillor Carpenter.
Yes, is this something that we would be dealing with annually at finance? We deal with the year-end surpluses in each different areas? We're balancing the surplus off, or is this something, is this counted differently?
Through the chair, we could allocate this money as part of the year-end surplus. This motion, the intent is to make it part of the, and it would be part of your year-end procedures. And so when the year-end report comes to Finance Committee, any savings experience would already be transferred to the reserve.
And we would see it there. Okay, thank you.
Councillor McCreary.
So the roads, Mr. Chair, the roads reserve would then be expended with respect to contractor services?
Through you, chairs, when preparing the budget, we would look at where this money would actually be allocated towards the pot. It goes to the larger reserve in general. So we look at our asset management planning and where it would actually fall. So the original intent, and I don't mean to speak for Councillor Caputo, is there an opportunity here to increase the road resurfacing program or the road shave and pave, et cetera, and put some of that money towards that those assets. So that was the original intent that I did understand from the councillor.
So what do we expect the surplus to be?
So through you, Chair Martin, right now it's a $200,000 deficit this year. So really it's very difficult to understand how that will fluctuate in the years to come. As I said, this to 27 inclusive. So if there are, we would report it as Kelly had mentioned, but it's difficult to see. We've got the Blue Box transition coming in as well as the organics program coming in. So there are a lot of possible constraints on that budget item.
So for 2024, for instance, if you were to presume that your costs were going to decrease with respect to collection, would you not adjust the budget for 2024 to reflect that lower number?
Through the chair, so I don't see it decreasing. Actually, I just see it increase because it's going to have the full year organics program. We'll be rolling that out in November of this year, so I don't foresee that happening.
Okay.
Really, again, we're in the contract. We'd like to keep that budget as is, and revisit that in 27 if there is, savings. If we see diversion increase, maybe there's a change to weekly pickup, et cetera. We'll have to revisit that at that time. So this is strictly just based on within the means of this contract and the changes to solid waste that we see coming.
But to be clear, your experience with the price increasing or decreasing will be reflected in your annual budget.
That's right, through the chair. So even in the document provided to council today, in terms of the line by line, you did see there's many increases to curbside collection that we're experiencing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, seeing no further speakers, I'll just comment. We do know that we're going to be seeing increases in this with the green bin program. There's going to be some changes with the Blue Box, but I think as Councillor Carpenter, I believe, said, this normally would come back to us as surplus anyway, and it's up to council where that gets utilized. If we feel at the time that roads is where that needs to go, we can increase that. But I don't see any point to this particular resolution here tonight. Seeing nothing further, we'll call the question.
The amendment carries on a recorded vote of 6-1. Those in favor, Councillor Sakoli, Caputo, Sless, McCreary, Carpenter, and Samuel. Those opposed, Councillor Martin, noting Councillor Sullivan's conflict to curbside waste collection.
Any other amendments, changes? Councillor McCreary.
Neither of those, as you've mentioned, Mr. Chair, but a question. We've had an awful lot of time and energy expended to produce something called our Internal City Services Review. And it's attached to our budget. Chair, is there a place in our agenda for us to have some discussion around this?
That would be no.
It's not, we're not devoting an agenda item to this though, is that correct?
That's correct.
Is there an opportunity for this committee to review that document as a committee? With that being the agenda item rather than simply asking a couple of questions?
Well, my understanding of the report is it's a work in progress. It's very early stages. I believe that once more meat's put on the bones, that'll come to finance. And any member who's not on finance is welcome to come to finance if they have questions about a particular item. And it'll be dealt with there and then come back to council.
I think this is a document that should be explored at a committee of the whole meeting or a budget meeting as opposed to a finance committee meeting.
And once there's more meat on the bones, you might be right. But at this stage, there's not a lot of information there. Perhaps,
Mr. Chair, I do see, and I'm sorry, I didn't have an opportunity to get through this whole thing in its entirety earlier. And the staff that I'm about to cite here aren't here to answer. But you know, when you look at things like homelessness prevention, where we have revenue of 3.1 mil and expenditures of 3.5 mil, I think there really are some basic questions that we could be asking, which I think might have some bearing on decisions we make about city finance.
Mr. Hutchings.
So if we're not gonna have an opportunity to do this in a fulsome manner during this estimates process, I really think that we should be devoting a session as a committee of the whole to take a look at it.
If I can, through Mr. Chair, Brian Hutchings, CEO, there are staff online. It's not just all staff. There are staff online willing to take questions as well. As the memo says, the process is about probably 20% complete. The programs have been identified by finance and separate them out. People have put in some benchmarks, but they haven't done where they've divided the benchmarks by the costs and looked at any of the comparators. So that has not been completed yet to look at comparators with other municipalities and what have you. So there's a bit more work to be done before this council can really have a good look and see how we compare to others and see how these costs are. But it probably would be a lengthy process. There's probably, over 200 programs on that, 220 programs on that list.
Is there a plan as to how that's going to come to council?
It was asked to come back for the budget, and as I said, it's incomplete, but we could, council directs us, will of council, we would bring that back to committee of the whole and have that discussion if council so desires. But that right now is, we're going to give what we completed in the estimates, and then they can come forth at another time when it's complete.
Okay. And that'll be council's decision if we want to do a special committee of the whole just to deal with that. That's an option. And that could come through finance first and then come to a special committee of the whole if there's an interest, which it seems there is. Do you have any specific questions on it at this time?
No, I have not. Well, I have, but there's no point in taking up committee time tonight when I think going through the entire document as a process is a more valuable exercise, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Councilor Carpenter, did I see you had a?
Yes, I just, I believe we haven't addressed the tax ratio reduction policy. Here, if we don't do anything, it will be in place. We'll have a tax ratio reduction with shifting to the residential property taxpayer.
As it stands at the moment. Yep.
Okay, I'd like to move a motion seeking a seconder that the no tax ratio reduction policy be implemented, that it be paused for the year 2023.
That was seconded by Councilor McCurry.
I'm just arguing for it. Well, I believe it'll make a difference in the average resident tax impact from 3.53 down to 2.62. And I think that's significant. And we've got the rate, commercial and industrial tax rates down significantly. And we're still moving that direction. But what this does, it gives us more time. When you move the rates down, you can't move them back up. So we have to give this serious thought. And it certainly is something that fits very well with moving forward with a 4-year financial budget. Then we could build this right into the 4-year budget. We would see how that was going to impact the taxes every year, and we could make that approval then. So right now, I think this would ease the burden on property taxpayers right now.
Councilor McCurry.
Chair, thank you. Councillor Carpenter is correct. And as we see so often, when he and I move and second something, it's generally successful. So a history on this, it's an initiative of the provincial government to ensure that tax fairness is implemented in municipalities. And we had a covenant with the Brantford Brant Chamber of Commerce going back a number of years ago to begin to implement this. And they gave us a great presentation and the bones to put meat on. And we've been pursuing this. I'm thinking it's probably about a decade now. And last, I believe we took a hiatus. And we can do it again this year. The Chamber of Commerce has asked us to ensure that our community remains competitive in terms of tax increases, competitive with our adjoining neighbors. And our staff have done a pretty darn good job in terms of paring this budget down. Also, this is possibly the best budget we've seen here with respect to the work staff have put into it, with what they've done with line items. So I don't think we're reneging on our commitment to Chamber of Commerce to take another hiatus in this. We've done some pretty good work on it, and we've certainly seen that that investment in Brantford is booming, and that the tax fairness ratio doesn't seem to be an impediment to our future development. And it will be of some benefit to residential taxpayers in a year when they're suffering right across the board from inflation and shrinkflation and tax increases. And Lord knows what the federal government's going to do to us this year as well. So better to leave a few bucks in folks' pockets than to try to stay on track with our tax fairness program.
Yes, and in our package, there's charts that show the different tax ratio for the different classes. And I remember when we started this program, we were up, there was only a few that were higher than us on the multipliers. Hamilton stuck out as one that was, I think they were above us on every one, but there was only one or two others that were above us. And when you look at the charts now, we're down closer to the other end of the chart. So we've made some good progress on this, especially compared to our peers and other municipalities in the area. So it's not a big deal to take another break on this. We are above the average in each one, but one of the things that I think we need to do is have another look at the targets we want to set. I'm not sure that 1.5 is appropriate. I would kind of prefer 1.8 for commercial and industrial. The only problem is with multifamily, because we have new properties at 1.1. I think it's only fair that we try to get the rest of the multifamily down to the same multiplier, but that's something that we can have a more fulsome conversation on at another time. So seeing nothing further on this item, we'll call the question.
The amendment carries on a recorded vote unanimously. Those in favor, Councillor Sakoli, Sullivan, Caputo, Celeste, Martin, McCreary, Carpenter, and Samwell.
Any other questions, comments, amendments, motions? Councillor McCreary.
Question. We have yet to have the full 2022 year-end results. Could staff indicate when the final tallies unaudited would be available to us?
Through the chair, final 2020 or not final, estimated 2022 unaudited statements should be beginning of March to mid-March.
And I would pose the question, is there an advantage to us to wait to ratify this budget until we have a full year-end accounting so that we can see what our 2022 actuals are and perhaps have some refinement with respect to what we think our 2023 estimate should be?
From what Kelly, Ms. Smith said earlier, we're looking at, I think she said there's a $600,000 surplus that's approximately at the end of the year on a 335 or on levy side of $172 million roughly in levy. You can see that's a delta, that's a point less than 0.07% difference in actuals on a gross summation. So you can see it's not that material difference, but you're going to find that we didn't I guess what I'm trying to say, we didn't over budget last year. And when you look at comparables, you will see line by line differences. But when it comes to summation, it's not a great summation between this year's actuals and last year's budget.
As they say, it is a pretty skinny chicken. One thing that I do see, and I really want to thank staff. I had a chat with Joelle last week, and I had a number of line items that pretty skinny chicken. You ever heard that before? And I submitted, I think 555 lines to Joelle, and Kelly's and her staff went through that diligently. But one thing that I did notice is that in the prior 2 years, we weren't doing a lot of training, travel, employee support. This year we're back on track, but I'm just wondering if there's some merit in us considering that we don't travel to conventions and seminars, and if we participate remotely via Zoom. There seems to be a pretty big increase in some of the line items, and I'd just like to get some comment on that about whether or not we should be resuming in-person participation or whether we can do it from the comfort of our own homes, as we do, all of us do that from time to time now in our work life.
The chair, Councilor McCreary, I could speak from the public works perspective, and maybe General Manager.
Thank you for volunteering to go
Yeah,
first,
maybe
Andy.
General Manager DeVries wants to speak to from the PLSP. A lot of the conferences are no longer providing a hybrid option. They're moving into in-person. There's exhibitors, et cetera. There's a lot that goes into it, and what we're finding is now that we're kind of, I don't want to say over COVID, but we're moving away from being only virtual. A lot of the options for hybrid are also being removed from the conferences. So it is something that, whenever we can, we will. Sometimes the sessions are recorded, and we can just purchase a recording and we'll sit with staff and watch it together. But a lot of the conferences that we attend, or seminars or training, is required, one, to keep our licenses and to qualify for our positions that we have in terms of qualifications for that particular position, but also to meet our requirements to keep, say, a certain certification. For example, my engineering certification, I have a certain requirement for a number of hours that I've worked and sessions that I need to attend. So a lot of those are also going to in person rather than virtual. So that's I could speak to it on that end, and maybe General Manager DeVries wants to speak on it.
Through the chair, ditto. With the and I'm
No, ditto is fine.
Ditto's great. I did want to add one thing. One of the things we've noticed is that networking is very important in this industry. And with the online training, as great as it was in order to pivot during COVID, we've missed a lot of those networking opportunities and the connections that you make by attending in person. And we see that through the example of our CAO actually become really vital to moving our programs along. It's something that our CAO has brought to this organization and has trained us in. And so we're looking forward to those in-person opportunities to make those connections.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, amendments? Councilor McCreary.
Well, I didn't want to hog the airtime if somebody else was in the queue.
Well, your time had been up previous time, so.
Okay, so without belaboring it at all, and we've heard some commentary about this already, and we used to refer to this this Hail Mary capital thing by the name of a prior councillor at one time. So I'm going to suggest that we, rather than taking the investment in Grand Bridge and transferring to reserves, that we leave it in the budget to offset what tax levy we can save by not transferring. That's $1,150,000. And don't everybody stick their hands up at once to second it.
Second by Councillor Sullivan.
And Mr. Chair, I think I can speak for everybody in saying that this is a mixed bag, and it is an opportunity for us to reduce the budget. But as the chair said, and I can't remember the first names to which he referenced, perhaps it was Peter and Pauline, I don't know. robbing one to pay the other. We could reduce the tax levy this year by using that amount, but then we would have to find the money next year. And there remains an opportunity for us to have a greater income next year, but we don't know what the new assessment is going to be. Certainly for 2025, it's going to be huge as we see the better part of maybe 1,000 units come on stream. But I'll just leave it out there. Thank you to Councillor Sullivan for supporting it. And I think I've presented both sides of the argument, Mayor. Sorry, not Mayor. You'd be
Acting Mayor.
acting Mayor. Yes, thank you.
And just because he seconded doesn't mean he's supporting it. That's up to him to decide. Any further comments on, Councillor Carpenter?
Just the staff, if we do this to reduce the operating side of the budget, we're taking from the capital side. This is the robbing the capital to pay for operating. We'll have to find twice that much money next year, will we not?
Through the chair, we will have to look at our capital program. I'm not sure what removal of this dividend will do to the current 2023 capital program as well. There may be implications.
Okay, and maybe over to India, are we able to remove this much of capital from Ward 3 projects going forward?
I don't think.
You don't have to answer that, India.
If,
Okay.
if I can through Mr. Chair, if this, I'm looking again, it's tough table talk right now. If this was in the capital budgets already, the $1.1 million in financing, I'm looking to my finance people. If it was in the capital budget and was approved, over to the clerk, this would be a reconsideration because you'd be changing the capital budget. But I'm looking to my finance people who aren't looking back at me right now. They all got their heads down looking at their shoes. Was this in the capital budgets, the 1.1 million? I'm assuming it was.
Through the chair, yes, the contribution was considered in our reserve funds when we were financing the capital program.
Okay.
The actual transfer is approved as part of the operating budget.
But it's in the capital budget to finance the capital budget. Sorry, Mr. Chair. Just want to make sure we get it straight so we don't violate any rules.
Through the chair, yes, the transfer was considered in the reserve forecast that
Thank you.
funded it.
So this motion is then out of order because it's requires a reconsideration of the capital budget. Okay. Motion is out of order. Any further questions, comments, motions? All right, that brings us to final budget update. Kelly, if you could give us the numbers, please.
Through the chair, I'm going to refer that to Pat Telfer. He's
Okay.
had his calculator out.
Okay, so the going through the chart here, the 2023 net expenditures at the beginning of the night were $182,428,716. We had one change, an increase of $69,727. That was for the unmet need. That brings the updated 2023 net expenditures to $182,498,443. That number carries down to the top of the next chart for the 2023 operating budget. The budget impact after assessment growth is 2.73%. The average residential tax impact is 2.24%. The dollar impact on the average residential property is $76.85. And the average commercial, industrial, and multi-residential tax impacts are all 2.24%. So removing that ratio reduction policy, everything is 2.24%.
Okay, any questions, comments on the final numbers? Seeing none, we'll now call the vote on the budget as amended.
The 2023 operating budget as amended carried on a recorded vote of 6-2. Those in favor, Counselor Secoli, Sullivan, Caputo, Sless, Carpenter and Samwell. Those opposed, Counselors Martin and McCreary.
Okay. We are now adjourned. Thank you, everyone. This was actually not a bad budget this year. Thank you.